Hey, what up, YouTube? Welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, we're going to go over this week's score predictions. We've got almost 125 games to predict, with many got Champions League football. We've got some local derbies, a Hampshire Derby, a South East London Derby, a West Yorkshire Derby, Arsenal versus Man United. So much to go over. So let's jump into tonight's Champions League games. There's 3 that we're going to be covering in, because we're only really focusing on the English game in this one. And that's Bodo Glimt versus Manchester City. The Norwegian Giants will obviously come and win this game against Man City. Yeah, I think it could be an interesting one. I have gone with a 0-0 draw, but I think the obvious thing would be to say a Man City win, but I don't think it'll be that easy. But maybe Haaland going back to Norway is going to score like 4 goals. I don't know. Inter Milan versus Arsenal, 2 hugely historical clubs. Both have had huge pedigree in domestically and also in Europe, and it's going to be an interesting one. You need to look at the Champions League table just to let everyone know that Arsenal have won all 6 games so far in the Champions League. Inter Milan have lost the last couple, but have won 4. It is also, I believe, the last set of games is this one. There may be one more after that. I can't remember. But it's getting towards that time where every point, so to speak, is important. And I think Inter Milan will desperately be throwing everything at this one and therefore win by 1-0. Tottenham Hotspur versus Borussia Dortmund. Yeah, Spurs and Dortmund 10th v 11th in this Champions League grand table. Still not a huge fan of the format, but so be it. They're almost exactly the same. I think Borussia Dortmund are very much better in attack, but defensively, Spurs are better. I actually think maybe Tottenham Hotspur could win this one 3-0 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Should be called just the New White Hart Lane, to be honest. But yeah, we covered the Salford City versus Swindon Town when we did the FA Cup predictions, but just to recap, 3-2 to Salford. Charlton Athletic are taking on my beloved Derby County tonight. And you know what? We managed to beat Preston 1-0. Not the most prettiest of games, but it got the job done. And a lot of people are saying, actually, from a defensive standpoint, one of the best performances we've had so far this season, which is always great to hear. And I think we can get another win. We'll go back-to-back wins for Derby. A 1-0 win for the Rams. Come on. We should be able to beat a team like Charlton, but saying that, it always ends up never being the case. Coventry City versus Millwall. Coventry are in a bit of position where that momentum is slowly fading, that early season momentum. And they've only had 2 wins now in the last 6 games. It's not as safe as it looked. And they definitely need some bolstering. And it's a difficult game up against Millwall, who are unbeaten in 5. We're going to go a 0-0 draw at the CBS Arena. Ipswich Town versus Bristol City. Ipswich are unbeaten in 5 and certainly, I think, will end up getting automatically promoted. Whether that's second place or whether that's first, I think it's more likely to be second. But yeah, they've got a game in hand over the 2 teams above them as well. Yeah, an interesting one for Tractor Boys. Bristol City have sort of faded away a bit. They have dropped down to 9th. I still reckon they could even probably sneak into the playoffs come the end of the season. So it's going to be a very entwined game, I think. 3-2 to Ipswich Town at Portman Road. Oxford United versus Queen's Park Rangers. You never know quite which team is going to turn up for QPR. That is a fact. But you do look at Oxford and you do think they're going to be in serious danger or relegation. 5 points now off safety. It's looking more and more difficult as the weeks go on. And let's face it, I think Oxford were lucky to stay up last season and definitely have a mountain to climb. So I'm going to go QPR to win this one by 3-1. Preston North End versus Hull City. A war of the roses in this one. And also, more importantly, 5th versus 6th. An interesting game. I would definitely say Preston finish above Hull come in the end of the season, but at the moment, Hull are the more informed team. I think it ain't going to be a pretty one, but I think there's going to be a reaction from Preston from a defeat in their last one, and we're at Deepdale. 1-0 to North End. Sheffield Wednesday versus Birmingham City. Sheffield Wednesday have only won once all season, and it feels very much same old every single week for them. But maybe there's a glimmer of hope in this one. Birmingham haven't won that many games of late. They are sort of slowly fading away. Chris Davis is under a mountain of pressure. I think Sheffield Wednesday can maybe actually get a win here. 2-0 to Wednesday. I'm gone a bit bold there, but why not? Swansea City versus Blackburn Rovers. Yeah, very much lower half of the table game of football this one is billed to be. And Blackburn haven't won in the last 5 games. Swansea are very hit and miss this season. I'm going to go 3-0 to Swansea City. They're at least slightly more consistently getting results from Blackburn. West Bromwich Albion versus Norwich City. It feels very much a very stupid idea for what West Brom have done in their appointment to manager. I think I mentioned this in the last predictions video, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the appointment of Eric Ramsey. I don't think he's going to do overly well. And I think this will show in this game against Norwich City, who I think will stay up. They're only 1 point now off safety, and I do think Portsmouth are much more likely to succumb to the drop. I therefore think, and also you do look, West Brom are now only 4 points from the relegation zone. They are actually precariously in danger. I think we're going to see a 2-2 draw at the Hawthorns here. Could be an interesting one. Wrexham versus Leicester City. The game which a lot of people are talking about for this one for all sorts of reasons, but I think realistically you need to look at it. It's 10th versus 13th. They're not the best teams in the league. They're not actually pulling up any trees. Leicester City, we're still not sure whether they're going to get a point deduction before the end of the season or not. It's absolutely farcical how much this is being dragged out, if you ask me. But if they get that 9-point deduction, they are suddenly thrusted into a relegation battle. Let's not make any mistakes about that. So I think in this one, we're going to see a 0-0 draw. Stevenage versus Bolton Wanderers, the only game in League One tonight. And it's a biggie, to be fair. Bolton Wanderers in 5th, Stevenage in 8th. Both of these two teams quite hit and miss. I mean, Stevenage have been poor recently, not their early day of the season self when they were looking like they were going to challenge for the title at one point. So I think I will have to go with Bolton Wanderers to win by 4-1. In the National League, we've got Boreham Wood taking on Scunthorpe United. Difficult game for both of these two people. Both of them have got quite lofty aspirations. But Boreham Wood in 2nd place, most informed team in the National League, winning week after week. But Scunthorpe are 5 games unbeaten, 4 wins during that time. It's going to be a very interesting game to see if either of these two teams lose their winning momentum. I am going to go with Boreham Wood to win this one, though, and they're at home 2-0. I think they're going to finish 2nd in the table, just behind York City, where it's going to be currently where they are, but I do think Rochdale will jump over Carlisle United, because look at the games in hand. You know, they've got 4 games in hand over Carlisle, and I think they will be very important. Hartlepool United versus Gateshead, a local rivalry in the North East. An interesting one at that as well. Hartlepool now only 2 points off the playoffs. The gap is closing quite substantially. Southend, you need to start getting on some form if they want to make sure that they're not going to fall out of the playoffs. I would say a relatively easy win. Gateshead are by far the worst team in the National League at the moment. They are losing everywhere they go. They have got not a lot to cheer about at the moment. But we'll see. I think Craig Elliott could well turn the ship to a better favour for the Heed. Rob Elliott, rather, not Craig Elliott. former manager who's come back. But I do still think Hartlepool win this one. 3-2. It'll be a close game, but still that win eludes Gateshead, which they haven't done now since November, I think, in all competitions. Southend United versus Eastleigh. As I was mentioning earlier, must-win game for Southend. And you look at Eastleigh, they're very much going to be that team which finishes around about 13th, 14th place, bang on mid-table. They always seem to be. I don't know where the aspirations is for the Hampshire-based club, but they do always seem to be in mid-table, don't they? So therefore, I am going to go 2-0 to the Essex-based side. They need to make sure that they don't drop out. Truro City versus Brackley Town. Bit of momentum coming both of these two teams' ways of late, actually. Brackley have won the last 3 games in a row. Truro only 1 defeat now in the last 5, albeit only 2 of them were wins. And I still convinced I'll be relegated. Maybe finish above Morecambe because they are gathering a few more points from them. But yeah, they're still going to be relegated to the Cornish side. And I think Brackley do win this one. I'm still not convinced fully over where they're going to finish this season. Somewhere, I think, above the relegation zone, though. 1-0 to Brackley Town. Yeovil Town versus Aldershot Town. Aldershot only 1 defeat in the last 6. Actually have given themselves a lot of hope going up. And up against the Yeovil team, I think they're roughly similar ability, to be honest, this season over the stretch of it. It's 15th versus 17th. Therefore, I think a 1-1 draw will be fair. We did the Hornchurch versus Telford and Woking versus Macclesfield in the FA Trophy. Their postponed games from a couple of episodes back. Do watch them and see how many I got right, I suppose. Leamington are going to be taking on Buxton in the National League North. Buxton now really knocking on the door of playoffs. I'm not convinced. I don't want to jinx them because I think actually if they can go on a good run of form, suddenly makes things seem a lot better for the Derbyshire side. But they are taking on Leamington, and I have a feeling they're going to come in fairly complacent, and there's going to be a draw in this one. A 1-1 draw. Just because Leamington are bottom of the league does not mean they don't possess capabilities. Marine versus Radcliffe. Radcliffe in 5th place, doing a phenomenal job. I think they could maybe overtake Kidderminster Harriers, but to be fair, Kidderminster Harriers have suddenly picked up a lot of form of late. So not saying that with 100% certainty. And you look at Marine, they need to get back to winning ways on a consistent basis because they've dropped back down to really mid-table, to be honest. And I can see them falling even a couple of places lower, somewhere like 17th, which really isn't where they would have been like to have been a few weeks ago. But I did say that a drop-off will come in time. However, the Merseysiders, I think, are going to win this one by 1-0. Got no rationale behind it, just vibes. South Shields versus Southport. South Shields are immense, to be honest. I know they're only 2 points clear of the top of the league, but look at some of them stats are phenomenal. 20 goals conceded so far, so that's less than 1 goal conceded a game. 58 goals scored, which is, I think it's over 2 goals scored a game as well. It's very good stats looking at South Shields. Southport, well, they're just above relegation zone. It's too tight to tell really at the moment who's going to be relegated because, the season is long and there's a lot of teams who could potentially be dragged into it, is what my feelings are saying. And I think maybe a 0-0 draw in this one. I think Southport could maybe try and pose a bit of a difficulty. Spennymoor Town versus Chester City, or just Chester rather. It used to be known as Chester City, I suppose. Yes, Chester disappointing, I would say, for the very historic city. They're really hit and miss. More time missing than hitting at the moment. And that's why they're in 12th in mid-table. And probably the expectations is for them to be involved in that playoff push, and Callum McIntyre, I imagine, might be under some serious pressure at that club right now. Especially assuming I think Spennymoor will get back to winning ways. I know they've not won in 5, but I think they do in this one and win by 3-0. They're both on 34 points, though, which is the odd one, but I just think home advantage maybe in this one. Dagenham and Redbridge versus Dover Athletic in the National League South we go. Dagenham and Redbridge, 15th place. I'm sure everyone's a bit disappointed where they are. I think they'll probably get lifted up to about 11th come the end of the season. It's a very congested mid-table. They, though, by any metric, that would still be an underperformance. And Dover Athletic are technically above them by a singular point. However, I would say home advantage for Dagenham and Redbridge will probably mean they win this one. 3-1, I'm going to go with to the Daggers. Hampton Richmond Borough versus Chesham United. Hampton and Richmond in the relegation zone. I think they will probably stay up at the expense of Farnborough, is what I'm suspecting will happen. It's a difficult game against Chesham, who more often than not win than lose at the present. But yes, a very mid-table team. They're in 11th. They're sort of around about that 11th, 12th, where I expect them to be come the end of the season. I think they win this one, therefore, 1-0. It won't be a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination. Chelsea versus Paphos. I don't know what to make of this one because Chelsea in the Champions League have really, they're very hit and miss, They're in 13th. You never know which one will come out. And to be fair, Paphos have got nothing to lose in this, right? Essentially, they need to win, right? It'll be an absolute miracle if they don't win to pull it off. So I think they just throw everything at this game, and I do actually think it could be a 0-0 draw, which may be enough to see the Cypriot side get in. It will ultimately depend on the Benfica and Copenhagen sides. I don't know who they're playing up against this weekend, but we'll have to see with that one. Marseille versus Liverpool. I think Liverpool do win this one because they desperately want to get automatic qualification, don't they? And they're just outside of it, I think, on goals scored or something ridiculous like that. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Liverpool in this one. Newcastle United versus PSV Eindhoven on the Wednesday night. I think Newcastle could possibly win this. They need to win to automatically qualify. I'm not saying it's impossible. Actually, I think they may well be able to do that because I think a lot of the teams maybe who are already in that automatic ones may be slightly complacent in this. 2-1 to Newcastle. PSV, they'll probably end up qualifying for the playoffs, but they're not being mind-blowing, sort of, so far in the Champions League. Southampton versus Sheffield United in the Championship. 15th versus 17th. What happened to these two teams? They used to be challenging for promotion with each other and jostling for that second place finish. And now look at them, mid-table mediocrity to say the least. Southampton, I think, will win this, even though they're on a worse run of form. I think they are the better team overall. Southampton to win 3-0 in this one. We've got no rationale behind it, but I just think they might do. Watford versus Portsmouth. Portsmouth just outside relegation zone, although I do suspect they'd be relegated. Watford just outside the playoffs. They lost their last one, but maybe they can get back to winning ways. Javi Garcia's men. 2-1 to the Hornets, therefore, at Vicarage Road. I just think it's a very logical prediction to make. Stoke City versus Middlesbrough. Stoke have got a bit of form back into them of late, and I do think they still get to the playoffs, actually. But if you look at Middlesbrough, I think that's the real challenge. They've won back-to-back games now, and maybe having a turnaround, making sure that they want to get their names in that automatic qualification. So suddenly kicked up a gear, and therefore Borough to win this one 3-1. Carlisle United versus York City, a promotion 6-pointer rather. What am I talking about? First versus third, both on 56 points. A must-win game for both of these two teams. Let's be honest about that. And as all these things tend to be, it tends not to be a winner in it. And it will be, therefore, a 1-1 draw in this game. Forest Green Rovers versus Altrincham. This is a chance, potentially, then, for Forest Green to make up some ground. Because I think they do need to. I suspect they could maybe finish fourth. But yeah, it's a very congested at the moment. They are actually technically only 2 points off the top of the league. It's so close considering they're in fifth. Any of them 5, I think, could feasibly win the title. And so winning games against Altrincham is a must. They've lost 5 in a row now, Altrincham. It's been a bad season. They got rid of Phil Parkinson. Briefly brought good form, but again, I think Neil Gibson now isn't necessarily the right answer either, and potentially he needs to go. I would say at this point, because Altrincham are very much looking down the barrel of relegation at the moment. I think they could just about stay up, or maybe finish in about 20th. But really, Altrincham should be doing a bit better than that. 2-1 to Forest Green Rovers, therefore. I think it's a fairly routine win for the Gloucestershire side. FC Halifax Town versus Morecambe. Halifax are also another team who are queuing up, knocking on the door of the playoffs. And again, another team I don't think quite have the capability to make it, although they are going on a bit of a run of form now that I was banging on about for a few weeks. And they are going to be taking on relegation-threatened Morecambe, currently in 22nd. Yeah, 1-0 to the Shaman. I don't think it will be a pretty game in this Yorkshire versus Lancashire affair. Yeah, I think Morecambe, it was almost guaranteed they'd be relegated from the start of the season, which is a bit of a shame, really, for the former Football League side. Solihull Moors versus Rochdale. Rochdale in 4th, as I said, one to watch out for. They really are. I do think they end up in the top 3 and therefore seeded into the playoff semi-finals, which I don't know whether it's ever that good or not, because it means actually you don't have that momentum going into it. You look at Southend last season and they got to the final because they had that game, they just kept on going and didn't have that break. Anyway, I think even though Solihull have actually really turned a corner and started putting some really good results in, I think it's got to be a Rochdale win for me. It's only going to be a 1-0 win, nevertheless, at Danson Park, but I still think Rochdale claim all 3 points. Wealdstone versus Tamworth. 12th versus 13th. Not a lot to separate these two teams, in all honesty. Both are not on the greatest run of form, a bit inconsistent at times. Tamworth maybe slightly better run of form, so we'll go 1-0 at the Lamb Ground to Tamworth. But yeah, I mean, Tamworth could feasibly go tumbling. I think there is a real possibility of that happening. The defence is just a bit shoddy this season. We covered Farmer versus Chelmsford City in an early prediction video, but just to recap, 4-3 to Chelmsford. Fenerbahce versus Aston Villa in the Europa League. There is no Conference League action, but there is a Europa League, which is always an interesting competition. Aston Villa, I think, I'm touch wood, I would say, but almost certainly guaranteed automatic qualification at this point in proceedings. I think that's fair to say. And up against Fenerbahce, who are very much a bit mediocre, They have actually gone 5 games unbeaten in this competition, but it's too many draws potentially in it. I think Aston Villa win 2-0. Braga versus Nottingham Forest. Braga are the better team of these two if you look at the league table on it, but Nottingham Forest are probably on a better run of form in this competition. And I hate to say it, but I do think Nottingham Forest do win this, actually. 3-0 to Nottingham Forest. But I do want Braga to win desperately. I would rather Forest did not qualify automatically to the next stage. Lincoln City versus Burton Albion. Old Burton, the toppler of or cutting off the head of the Lee Grant at Huddersfield Town, which I think was awfully unfair. They're in the playoffs in 6th. It's a competitive league. I don't know what else Huddersfield could do, but we'll talk more about that when we get to the weekend predictions. On this topic, though, I know Lincoln are in incredibly good run of form, and I think we'll probably finish 2nd. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised here if Burton win this one. I still wouldn't discredit them from getting relegation, but maybe beating Huddersfield could mark a turning of fortunes and maybe win back-to-back games, which then suddenly makes things look a lot nicer for the Brewers. 1-0 then to Burton Albion at Sincil Bank. Derby are playing on a Friday night. We're in the Championship up against West Bromwich Albion. And the great news for Derby is that we've not lost at home to West Brom since 2003, which was before I was born. So I've never, thankfully, lived to see Derby lose at home to West Brom. Please don't make that be the case in this one. But I think there's a lot of memes which do fly around whenever we play West Brom. Thanks for the 6 points this season. See you next season. And I think it does ring slightly true, and I think we are going to see Derby winning this one. 2-1. We'll go with Adjimang to score because he's in quite good form at the moment. And we'll give Brem Raritan Diaz a goal as well. Or maybe a Matt Clark header. Something like that. West Ham United versus Sunderland. Yeah, I mean, West Ham, we need to start picking up points if we want to see Forest relegated. 4 points is the gap. They did win in their last game, though, West Ham. Maybe that they can carry on and take it into this one. They're at home at the London Stadium. And you know what? Sunderland have been slowly dropping points at this point in the season. A lot of draws in there, but I think therefore we'll give West Ham a win. 1-0 to the Hammers. Same could probably be said for Burnley versus Spurs. And I know they shocked everyone by getting a draw in their last game against Liverpool. To be fair, they've had quite the difficult run of fixtures, haven't they? You could probably argue that, but they, you know what? They drew up against Liverpool, which not every team can do. Can they follow up against Spurs? It wouldn't be surprising, would it, if Spurs suddenly, came out with a win, but it would also not be surprising if Spurs bottle this. But I'm going to go with the Spurs win. 5-2. End-to-end game. Riveting stuff. Fulham versus Brighton Hove Albion. Brighton got a point last night at Bournemouth, and they are now in a mid-table duel versus Fulham. 11th versus 12th. Not a lot of difference between these two teams, in all honesty. 3-1 to Fulham. I think Craven Cottage is maybe where it's at, and Fulham on slightly better run of form at the moment. Manchester City versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. 4 games unbeaten now in the league for Wolves, and if you extend to the FA Cup, 5 games unbeaten, which I don't think anyone was suspecting to happen in the slightest. And maybe there's a brief glimmer of hope that they won't be as bad as Derby. I think the pressure's maybe a bit off them, considering, they think they're already relegated at this point. Man City should be winning this game. Let's be honest, and I think they do. But I don't think it'll be the pretty score lines of 6 or 7 nils. I think it's going to be a 1-0 win to Man City. AFC Bournemouth versus Liverpool. Liverpool have drawn 4 games in a row now. Need to get back to winning ways, really. And we're better than up against Bournemouth, who are a very shaky team at the moment. Therefore, I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for the Reds in this one. Middlesbrough versus Preston North End. 2nd versus 6th. Difficult game, I think, for both of these two teams. And I think it will therefore be a bit more of an even game as a result. 1-1 is what I'm going to be saying. Millwall versus Charlton Athletic. Millwall are currently in the playoffs and Charlton are far from it, but this is a local derby, so that sort of throws everything out the window, irrespective of positioning. However, I still suspect at the Den, and Millwall being a better team at the moment, they will still win this one. 2-1 to the Lions. Birmingham City versus Stoke City in this all West Midlands affair. Birmingham in 14th, Stoke in 7th. I think it's got to be a Stoke win, doesn't it? 3-1 to the Potters at St Andrews. Yeah, it's very much. I suspect that Stoke will get into the playoffs. It would be so retro to get Stoke back into the Premier League. They were there for years, and a lot of us grew up, I think, watching Stoke playing in the Premier League and that sort of mid-table, long throw-in, Rory Delap sort of era. It was very much the way they did things. Blackburn Rovers versus Watford. Watford in 8th, as I say. Definitely going to be a team who are hoping to challenge for playoffs, but this is the Championship we're talking about, where anything and anything happens. Everything and anything happens in these games. 5 games without a win for Blackburn, and they'll suddenly come out with a win in this one. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 win at Ewood Park to Blackburn Rovers. Makes no logical sense, but that is the crazy game in the Championship, and that's why we love it. Bristol City versus Sheffield Wednesday. Maybe buoyed on by the win that they had in midweek which I foreseen to happen. I think they'll get a draw against Bristol City. 0-0. They don't score a lot, but you know what? That could be an interesting one if that happens. Suddenly things look a lot better for Wednesday, don't they? Hull City versus Swansea City. I'm pretty confident with a Hull win in this one. 2-1 to the Tigers. I think Hull need to, for me, just get a bit more defensive. Close some of them defensive errors, and actually Hull could be a really good team. Leicester City versus Oxford United. We're going to go with an Oxford win. We are. We're going mad. Going mad. But we're going with an Oxford United win. It makes 0 sense. Matt Bloomfield is clearly not the most well-known manager at this level. Certainly, I would say in League One, he's a good manager, but interesting appointment in the Championship. But 3-2 to Oxford United. Queen's Park Rangers versus Wrexham. Everyone, apart from the Glory supporting Wrexham fans, want QPR to win this, I feel. And therefore, at Loftus Road, we might just have to predict it. 2-0 to QPR. Sheffield United versus Ipswich Town. Should be a win for Ipswich, but I'm not going to go with that. I think Sheffield United actually come out and perform and put on a game. 2-0 to the Blades at Bramall Lane. An odd one, to say the least, but I think we can all say the Championship does throw curveballs. Cardiff City versus Stockport County in League One. First top of the league, Cardiff, and let's face it, they're going to win the league. There's not that much left to go of the season for them to wrap it all up, to be honest. And up against Stockport, though, it's a difficult game. It's a must-win game, I think, for Cardiff if they want to win the league, because Stockport are in 4th, and if you can beat 4th place, then you can probably beat anyone. 2-1 to Cardiff, then. We'll go with that. I just think you look at Stockport and a little bit of inconsistency in there. A West Yorkshire derby, Huddersfield Town versus Bradford City. I wonder if they would have appointed a manager by that point. As I was saying, unfortunate or unfair maybe for... Oh, they have. That was a very, very quick turnaround. He must have been appointed today. He's literally just been appointed just now, I feel, within the last 24 hours, because it wasn't when I was looking last night. Liam Manning, no less, has been appointed 2 hours ago as the manager of Huddersfield Town. You get real groundbreaking news on this channel, don't you? But yeah, what an option, what a choice, you know. And you know what? I really rate Liam Manning. I thought he did a great job at Bristol City. Didn't do a great job in Norwich, that is fair. But, you know, if he gets time to mould and build a team, then he can be a real force. And, you know, he does know a fair bit about this level, having sort of been here before. He was with Oxford United, where he did a really good job, which saw him move to Bristol City, if you remember. Yeah, I think he's, for me, not really a League One manager. I think he's a Championship manager. He even got Milton Keynes into the playoffs. You know, let's not forget when he was back in 2021-22, he managed to get them in the third place position in League One. So certainly a high pressing style of football is what's expected, but I think this could be really good news for Huddersfield. So I think we're going to go with a win for the Terriers. His first match in charge, 2-1. That new manager bounce starting this weekend. Plymouth Argyle versus Luton Town. Luton just outside the playoffs, whereas Plymouth are in 14th. But Plymouth are now beginning to pick up points, which does make a world of difference. Their defence still a bit cagey at times, but, you know, 3-1 I'm going to go with to Plymouth Argyle at home park. Might seem a bit of a mad one, but you know what? I'm not being convinced that Luton will actually reach the playoffs this season. I actually think Mansfield Town are more likely at the moment. Blackpool versus Northampton Town. Relegation 6-pointer. Very much so. Both on 29 points. On -7 goal difference. On goals scored, Blackpool are just outside the relegation zone. This is, as I said earlier, about a 6-point games. It really, you know, they aren't always as interesting as they build to be. 0-0 draw, therefore, at Bluefield Road. I just think it's going to be one of them ones, isn't it? Bolton Wanderers versus Leyton Orient. I think it's going to be a formality win for Bolton Wanderers, if I'm honest. They're at the Uniball, or whatever you want to call it. And I think they're going to win this one 2-1. Doncaster Rovers versus Wigan Athletic. Wigan in 18th. They've sort of been fading away in the last few weeks, and maybe it's an ideal time then for Doncaster to come and get something, because now they're only 3 points off safety because they've had 4 points in the last 2 games, and things now turning around maybe a bit. They did recently appoint a new manager, didn't they? Doncaster. Was it Doncaster who recently appointed a new manager? No, they still have Grant McCann, but I do trust Grant McCann. I do think he's a good manager. 1-1 draw in this one. Yeah, we can just don't. If we can lose this, creates a real dilemma, because that will then reduce the gap between these two teams by only a point. Port Vale versus Exeter City. We all thought Port Vale had turned the corner, didn't we? About a week or so ago, and then it crashing down at the weekend. And let's face it, Exeter are actually doing quite well at the moment. In the last 5 games, it's only been 1 defeat. You know, it's quite solid from Exeter. I know we'll exclude the FA Cup absolute trouncing they got against Man City. But yeah, 4-2 to Exeter City. Reading versus Barnsley. Barnsley, that was it. That was the team in South Yorkshire who got rid of their manager recently. Yeah, was it? No, I'm making this up. Who was? Maybe it wasn't anyone. Maybe it was just me confusing Huddersfield with some other teams in Yorkshire. Conor Hurahan's still in charge, but I think he's maybe a bit on borrowed time. Let's face that one. I think Barnsley, they did win the last game, but you know what? They're so far away from the playoffs and where they really should be. In fact, Reading also are far off from the playoffs, but only 4 points, and they were actually on a good reform until last weekend. I do actually think Barnsley are going to win this one 4-2. I have not really got much of a reason for it. I just Part of me thinks Barnsley are too low down in the table. They should be higher. Rotherham United versus AFC Wimbledon. AFC Wimbledon in 17th, which, you know what, that isn't too bad for their first season back at this level. Rotherham are losing so much. Matt Hampshire, how is he still in a job? I generally am so confused about Rotherham, this sort of current predicament that they're in. They're losing week after week after week. I can't even remember the last time they won a game. It feels like it's such a depressing time to be a Rotherham fan. However, this is where Mr. Madness comes in, and I'm going to go a 3-0 win to Rotherham United. Maybe not the most expected result, but so be it. Stevenage versus Mansfield Town. Stevenage and 8th, Mansfield in 10th. It's going to be a bit of a close game. Mansfield, though, have won the last 4 in a row. And that's why I was saying that, you know what, if they carry on winning, they can definitely get into the playoffs, because that momentum is really positive at the moment at that club. And at the Lamex, it might be a 1-1 draw. I'm going to go with. I think Stevenage are a tough cookie at times. Wycombe Wanderers versus Peterborough United. 9th versus 12th. 1 point, though, is all that separates these two teams, even though there is a lot of teams, well, a couple of teams in the middle of them. A very close mid-table, I think League One is, if that's fair to say. 3-1 to Wycombe Wanderers is what I'm going to go with. This is Adams Park, and they are slightly higher up the table for a reason. And you can't discredit that they will get playoffs. I don't think that's totally out of the question. Barnet versus Oldham Athletic in League Two. This was a National League game last season, and now look at them. They are both in League Two. It's actually 12th versus 13th. They're very close this season. Only 1 goal-on-goal difference is all that separates them. But Oldham are the team on much better form. But I'm going to go with a dull 0-0 draw in this one. Notts County versus Crewe Alexander. 7th versus 10th. If Crewe win this, they will probably, well, it depends by how many, would leapfrog Notts County. I think they need a 3-goal swing. Technically it's 4 goals on. No, it's 3 goals on things, so that would probably mean only 2, right? Because that means that 2 will get taken off by Notts County. Either way, I don't think it's going to happen. So I don't know why I'm saying it. I think it's going to be a 0-0 draw, which does leave themselves open a bit, Notts County, to other teams such as Chesterfield, hopefully, to make up that gap. Barrow, they are going to be taking on Crawley Town. 19th versus 22nd. 5 points separate these two teams. Crawley are beginning to look a bit bad again. They really, really need some good fortune to start coming their way. I think they probably... I still don't think Bristol Rovers are going to be that great, and I'm still not convinced about Shrewsbury, so can maybe push up to 20th. But yeah, not a good season for the Sussex-based team, and they're travelling a long way to go to Barrow, only to be handed a defeat and go 1-0 to Barrow in this game. Bromley versus Swindon Town. 1st versus 2nd. A very exciting game it is as well. I mean, ultimately, it won't determine how much of a difference for Bromley if they lose this, but they'd just rather not, you know. It's one of them ones. And I think, as a lot of these games do, they do tend to end in draws, and therefore a 1-1 draw is what I've got in this one. To be fair, Swindon don't draw a lot of games, I've realised. Actually, I've just looked at the 1 win, draw, loss. Swindon, Walsall and Salford are all on 14 wins, 4 draws, and 7 losses. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Have you ever seen 3 teams on exactly the same run of form in such a good position? That is quite something. Anyway, 1-1 with that one. Cambridge United versus Tranmere Rovers. Cambridge are doing an all right job. You know, got the 2 points off the automatic zone. They're on a good run of form themselves as well, it must be said. Everything seems quite nice and rosy. And Tranmere are an odd team. They're very much a hit and miss sort of team, but I think they're going to get a draw in this one. A 0-0 draw, nevertheless. Cheltenham Town versus Grimsby Town. 11th versus 18th, and it's ironically enough Grimsby who are higher than Cheltenham, which maybe you wouldn't have suspected a couple of seasons back. But, you know, 4 games unbeaten now, Grimsby. But I'm going to go with another draw. A lot of draws I got in League 2 for this week. This one, a 1-1 draw. Shall we give a win? Colchester United versus Fleetwood Town is what the game we're predicting here. Colchester are just outside the playoffs by 3 points. I suspect they might do it. They're on a good run of form. They could even probably get Cambridge to fall out because they don't score enough Cambridge. That's their real issue. Well, but they are taking on Fleetwood, Colchester. They've not won in the last 4 games. So we're going to go Colchester to win this one by 3-0. Harrogate Town versus Gillingham. Yeah, Gillingham don't win a lot of games. A lot of draws in it. 11 draws in their season so far. I think Harrogate will actually probably be playing to get a draw in this one. So we're going to get a 1-1 draw. Not the most entertaining game. MK Dons versus Shrewsbury Town. You know what? Shrewsbury won their last game, and I could actually see MK Dons throwing this away. I've been saying for weeks that they should be gaming for the title, and they're just not good enough at the moment. So yeah, Shrewsbury to win this one by 1-0. Another disappointing result for Franchise FC. Newport County versus Chesterfield. Newport are not going to win this game. Never in a million years are Newport winning this game. I know Chesterfield haven't won in the last 4, but they've only lost once in the last 6. So a lot of them are draws going their way at the moment. 3-0 to Chesterfield. They need to get back to winning ways, and I think they will do. They score a lot, Chesterfield. They just don't sort of defend that well. They need in January to sort of fix up that defence. Salford City versus Bristol Rovers. I know Salford on some incredible form at the moment. They are joint best informed team in this league alongside Bromley. But yeah, I mean, you would suspect Bristol Rovers to lose this one, but I'm going to go in unlikely 1-1 draw. I don't know what's pulling me towards it. I just think it's going to be a draw-heavy weekend in League 2. Walsall versus Accrington Stanley. To wrap it up in League 2, I think Walsall actually lose this one. They're seeming to have that bottle again, aren't they? Which is always an unfortunate tendency, but Walsall seem to be exhibiting at the moment. 1-0 to Accrington Stanley at the Bescot. On to Aldershot Town versus Carlisle United. Talking about maybe an upset, I think Aldershot Town could be causing one in this one. We just look at Aldershot. We just did earlier on in this video, and we saw how actually in form Aldershot were at the moment. And I don't think they're going to be scared at this moment in time taking on Carlisle. They're at home as well, and it's a long way to travel. 2-0 to Aldershot Town. Altrincham versus Boreham Wood. Boreham Wood are the most informed team in the National League. Can anyone actually stop them winning at the moment? Well, maybe Altrincham can. I actually think this could be another crazy result. I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Okay, Boreham Wood aren't going to lose it, but it's going to feel like a loss to draw up against a team like Altrincham, which they really should be beating at the moment in time, you would say. Boston United versus Southend United. Boston are in pretty bad form at the moment, but I've got something telling me that they might be able to win up against Southend, which is a really odd one, but 3-0 to Boston United. We've got some crazy ones coming out in this week's predictions videos, clearly. Brackley Town versus Hartlepool United. I'm going to go another win for Brackley. I'm going to make it 5 in a row. And then suddenly things look much better. 3-1 at St James's Park. No, not that one. Not that one either. The one which is home to Brackley Town. But yeah, an interesting one. Eastleigh versus FC Halifax Town. Halifax, you know what? They're only a point off the playoffs, but Eastleigh are, as I keep on saying, an odd one. You can never quite tell what Eastleigh are going to get, but we're going to go with a 1-1 draw at the Silver Lake Stadium. Gateshead versus Wealdstone. You know what? It's about time that Gateshead stop losing. Wealdstone are rubbish, right? I know they're 12, but for the sake of drama, they're rubbish because, you know what, they've lost 4 in the last 6. And actually, I think Gateshead could potentially get something in this one. We're going to go Gateshead to win. An unlikely win, albeit, but a 1-0 win to Gateshead, nevertheless. I don't think it'll be a great game at all, but you know what? A win is a win, I think, for the Heat fans. It would just be so much better. They've lost so many fans because of how bad they've been in the last few weeks. They need something to keep them coming. Morecambe versus Solihull Moors. I think Morecambe get back to winning ways. I don't know why. Just something tells me that Morecambe need to get back to winning ways. And we're going to do so here at the Globe Arena 4-2. Rochdale versus Truro City. I know Truro are improving a bit, but I think Rochdale, they're sort of grinding out the results. They're very defensive-minded. They've only conceded 16 goals this season. I know they've played a lot less games than everyone else. So it sort of becomes a bit less impressive, suppose, that stat. But you know what? They are still quite very good defensively. I think they're going to grind out a 1-0 win in this one. Tamworth versus Sutton United. Same for the Sutton. For Tamworth versus another Sutton United would have been quite interesting. There's a Sutton United based in Sutton Coldfield down in like tier 10. Either way, it would have been a much closer geographical one and maybe a bit more of an entertaining game. Alas, it's not the case. It's a Sutton down in London, and therefore we're going to see a 1-1 draw and not an entertaining game in the slightest. Woking versus Yeovil Town. I think Yeovil will win this one over Woking. We're going to go with a 2-0 win to the Glovers. York City versus Braintree Town. Braintree are hovering dangerously close above our relegation zone, and this is a strong challenge that they've got to win. If they're going to win, get anything from York City, they're going to have to be better than their A game, and I don't think they will be. York City to win this one by 2-1. Scunthorpe United versus Forest Green Rovers in a late kickoff. 5th versus 6th. You can see why. Scunthorpe definitely on a better run of form at the moment, but both of these two teams are very, very strong, and it's going to be a good contest. I'm going to go 2-0 to Forest Green Rovers in this one. ASC Telford United versus Kings Lynn Town. The odd one about Telford is part of me thinks, great, they could probably reach the playoffs considering their current form. I wouldn't discount it. They're only 4 points away now. On the other hand, I keep on thinking, can they continue? Can we continue? There's something about it which seeing Telford in the playoffs just doesn't feel right to me. Not at this moment in time anyway. I'm just thinking it's going to be like a 4-0 to Kings Lynn Town. They're not won in ages. It's a mad thing to say, I know, but also I don't think Kings Lynn should be that low down in the table. They should be around about 13th, even based on this season. Like, they may even be higher previous seasons, but this season alone, they should be, competing much higher than they are. And just drawing too many games, I think, is their issue of Kings Lynn. Alfreton Town versus Bedford Town. Would be nice for Alfreton to win this one, but I don't suspect they will. I think they might get a draw, though. Alfreton are so hit and miss. They're going to leave it to the last day, and I'll just hope that they stay up in it. But at the moment, I'd actually say they're the worst team in the division. They've conceded the second, well, not the second, but they've conceded 45 goals, which isn't great. Just nothing seems to be that great at the moment. And if it wasn't for Leamington, they'd probably be in bottom of the league. We're going to go 2-2 at North Street. We're going to keep on calling it North Street, despite whatever the new name of it is. But they should really be winning this game if they want a hope in hell to stay up. Chorley versus Darlington. Chorley 11th, Darlington at 7th. But you do look at Chorley. I say it every time, Chorley should be getting the playoffs. I don't think they will this season now. I think they finished like 8th. But maybe this is a winnable game at Victory Park. 3-0 to Chorley. Darlington are being a bit hit and miss at the moment. And they need it for Buxton to be able to make up ground if they win their game. Hereford versus Spennymoor Town. Well, I need Hereford to lose in order for Alfreton to make up ground in the other end of the table. And to be fair, Spennymoor haven't won in the last 5 and should really be doing a bit better. 2-0 to Spennymoor Town in this one. Leamington versus Curzon Ashton. Going with a bit of a crazy result in this one, I've got written down. Leamington to win 4-1. Curzon Ashton aren't looking amazing at the moment. They've only won 2 games in the last 6 and lost the rest of them. And I think Leamington, it's a crazy thought, but I think they could just about stay up. It's a 4-1 to the Breakers. Weird one. And another weird one I got is Marine to beat South Shields 4-1. Nothing says this channel more than that. Mad result, but sometimes crazy does happen. And I think South Shields does have the odd temperament to throw away games when they shouldn't do. Oxford City versus AFC Fylde. Yeah, Oxford City just above the relegation zone. 2 points is all it takes. And I would rather they lose up against Fylde, but I don't think Fylde capitalise on the throwaway points by South Shields. And I think Oxford City win this one 3-0. We've got some odd predictions this week, let's be real. Peterborough Sports versus Chester. I'm not going to go mental again. I think Peterborough Sports do lose this one, and I think Chester go back to winning ways, which I haven't done in a while now, but 1-0 to Chester. It's a game of very paramount importance for the club to get back to winning ways. Radcliffe versus Buxton. Difficult game for Buxton, but not far to travel. And I would say if they want to get to the playoffs, it's a sort of a must-win game. And I think they do win this one, do the Bucks. 2-0 to Buxton. Just hoping that they sneak into the playoffs. Would be interesting to see them in the National League, wouldn't it? Scarborough Athletic versus Kidderminster Harriers. 4th place Kidderminster, 6th place Scarborough Athletic. But look at Kidderminster, on so much better run of form at the moment. 6 games unbeaten, 5 wins in that spell. Truly incredible form. 3-2 to Kidderminster Harriers. A bit more of your typical National League or North games, maybe. Southport versus Merthyr Town. Merthyr in 3rd, and I think we're just going to see another win added to their collection. They're also on fairly decent form, and actually now only 3 points off the title. Do need to watch out for that, both South Shields and Fylde. And I think they do win this one. It's not... Southport aren't pulling up any threes this season in 19th. They're probably going to be safe now that they managed to gather a few points in tow. 2-0 to Merthyr Town. Worksop Town versus Macclesfield. I'm worried for Worksop because I think in their underbelly they've conceded 48 goals. I think you look at it, I can't see them managing to sustainably ship that many goals away and stay up. I know they're 8 points clear of the relegation zone. I'm still willing them to be relegated in replace of Alfreton Town on the last day of the season. So I'm going to go with a Macclesfield 1-0 win. I don't think they get playoffs, by the way, Macclesfield. I don't. I think their fixture congestion is far, far too much that they suddenly realise it when it all catches up with them and they're playing 3-4 games a week and to try and make up them games. They've currently got 3 games on hand up against Buxton above them. Like, absolutely ridiculous to try and catch that many up because they're also going to be missing out one because they've got another FA Cup game that they'll be fielding their full strength team for. They're still in the FA Trophy because they're playing the FA Trophy this midweek, aren't they? Up against Woking, and I got them to win that one. it piles up. It really does. AFC Tottenham versus Dover Athletic in the National League South. Tottenham have sort of fallen away a bit of late. They're 13th. They were in a playoff contention at one point. Not anymore. Far cry away from that. And I think Dover are their adversaries in this one, just behind them. Going to go home advantage, 3-2 to AFC Tottenham. But yeah, there's not much separating these two teams. Real end-to-end game though. Bath City versus Worthing. Worthing are top of the league, and you know what? They deserve it. I think they have been absolutely phenomenal, scoring 62 goals so far this season. Conceding 31, okay, not the best, but certainly going forward have looked impressive. And let's face it, Bath for 2 points per relegation zone. This is a game that Worthing should be winning, and they will. 2-0 to Worthing. Chesham United versus Maidenhead United. A bit of a mid-table clash, or upper mid-table. 9th versus 11th. I mean, 3 points off the playoffs now for Maidenhead. I think they're going to get it. I really do. I actually think they could catapult up. They're only 9 points off second, and if they put their mind to it, they could well and truly get there. But they need to carry on putting out good performances week after week. And I think maybe Chesham won't be as easy as a challenge as you think. A 0-0 draw in this one. It's been a frustrating season for the Magpies, hasn't it? Dorking Wanderers versus Chippenham Town. I know Chippenham have picked up a few points of late, but they lost the last game, and I still can't see them winning this one. But it would be a shame to see Chippenham. They were such a mid-table team. It was so easy to predict them having a draw every single week. But yeah, Dorking Wanderers, I've got to win this one for obvious reasons. You know, it's only going to be a 1-0. You know, I'm not going to be disrespectful, but it's going to be a win for Dorking nevertheless. Eastbourne Borough versus Farnborough, a real relegation 6-pointer needed. Well, of sorts. There's 4 points separating these two teams from the same goal difference. It must-win game for Eastbourne, and I think they do win it. As I said earlier, I think Farnborough will be relegated. And you know what? I think Eastbourne may be one of the reasons for that. 4-0 to the Sussex coastal town. On to the next one. Ebbsfleet United versus Dagenham and Redbridge. Ebbsfleet have won 4 in a row, and a lot of people would probably suspect them to win it. But I think in this semi-localish derby, you know, we're not too far away from each other, are they? I think Dagenham and Redbridge come away with a win. 2-0 to Dagenham and Redbridge. Enfield Town versus Torquay United. Easy win, I'd say, for Torquay in this one. They're in the playoffs. They're in there for a reason. Enfield and relegation zone. Haven't won a game in donkey's years, it seems. So, yeah, 4-1 to Torquay United. Horsham versus Chelmsford City. Chelmsford are so incredibly mid-table. Loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. You know, no, Matt, they'll lose their next one and they'll win this one or something like that. But anyway, I think Horsham, you know what, they're in the playoffs. There's a jolly good reason for that. And I think they do stay in it, this Sussex team. They've been really impressed me, actually. I didn't know what entirely to see for them coming into this season. But from my basis, looking in from a neutral perspective, great performances. 2-1 to Horsham. Maidstone United versus Hemel Hempstead Town. Maidstone, they're another one of them ones queuing up just outside of playoffs. And you know what? They're doing a jolly good job on form at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneaked in either. The Kent side are doing quite a job at the moment. And I think if they want to get to the playoffs, if they win this game, it certainly creates an opportunity. There's 5 points separating them. I think Maidstone will win this one 1-0. Salisbury versus Hampton Richmond Borough. Salisbury have managed to get 3 wins in the last 4 games, which have sort of seen them well clear of a relegation danger. And I think they're going to get another win against this one, Hampton Richmond Borough. I partly think they're going to stay up, but I partly want them to be relegated, partly because of how long their name is, having to spell this out on my spreadsheet every single time. Anyway, I'm going to go Salisbury to win this one by 2-1. Slough Town versus Tonbridge Angels. 17th versus 18th. They're on the same amount of points. I don't think there's a lot of difference, but Slough at the moment, 4 wins in the last 5 games. Decent enough return from the Berkshire team. And I think we're going to have another one at Arbour Park here. 3-1 to Slough Town. They're beginning to get a bit better, the Rebels. Weston-super-Mare versus Hornchurch. 2nd versus 3rd. I think a lot of ones which people have their eyes on in the National League South this game week, I suppose. Because I suppose whoever wins this could go on and topple off Worthing. Worthing will just be happy if both of these two teams drop points, to be honest, and they win. But I'm going to go with a 3-2 win for Weston-super-Mare at home. A real end-to-end game. We've got the Sunday kickoffs with Brentford versus Nottingham Forest to start off with. Brentford, a very odd team. They reach a point, a sort of a climax, if you will, and then they start dropping off again. And we've sort of seen this season. They've dropped back down to 7th, like losing their last one. On such a good run of form before, but again, I think Nottingham Forest will probably win this one 2-0. Because they're annoyingly seeming to go on about on a run of form. But I'd love Brentford to win this at home at the G-Tech Community Stadium. Crystal Palace versus Chelsea in this all-London affair. 13th versus 6th. Is Glasner's head still in the job? I don't know. I really don't know, actually. It's hard to say. But he can demonstrate it by getting something from this one. And I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw at Selhurst Park. Not an easy game that Chelsea may think. I'm sure Liam Rosenior isn't going in with that mindset, but some of the players might do. Newcastle United versus Aston Villa. They've also drawn each other in the FA Cup, haven't they? In a few weeks' time, which we'll get around to predicting when that comes up. But 4 games unbeaten for Newcastle United. They're up against Aston Villa, who are 10 points above them. But in terms of league spaces, not that many. But yeah, I think maybe at St James's Park, Newcastle beginning to get together a bit of form. And you know what? They're only 3 points off getting into the Champions League. I don't know if it will necessarily happen, but stranger things have happened. 3-0 to Newcastle United. Arsenal versus Manchester United. And this is when Sky Sports say, oh, this is such a historic game. It means so much historically. You know, Wenger versus Ferguson. It's like, yeah, that was 20 years ago, guys. Football has moved on. We've all moved on. Yeah, Arsenal are looking like they could win the league this season. Actually, I think at the moment they are going to, because Man City have suddenly thrown away a lot of opportunities in the last few weeks. But you know what? Man United, they're nowhere. They're 5th. Like, it's not the game that people... It's not the title decider that people in the past thought this game was. And it hasn't been for the best part of a decade. At least, if not 15 years. So yeah, 1-1 draw at the Emirates. It's not going to be a great game. It's going to be a pretty boring game. And it will just be overhyped the heck out of like usual. There's my pessimistic rant about this fixture. On for Hampshire Derby, Portsmouth versus Southampton, of course. And I think Southampton win this one 4-0. Just to rub salt into the navy wounds of Portsmouth, as Southampton get the bragging rights here and Portsmouth get put in the relegation zone at the same time. Everton versus Leeds United on the Monday night. Everton show that they can get results where it counts by winning 1-0 up against Aston Villa. And I think we're going to see another scrappy 1-0 at the Hill Dickinson Stadium for Everton up against Leeds United. Norwich City versus Coventry City. I keep on saying it. Coventry are going to be running out of steam, and I think Norwich could potentially win this. I alluded to it earlier, didn't I? 2-1 to Norwich City. It is the Championship after all. Many strange things have been known to happen. Chelsea City versus Tonbridge Angels. This should be played on Tuesday night. I don't know why it's been played on Monday night. It just is. I think it's going to be a relatively even game. 1-1 in total. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you are new around here, please do subscribe. We're going to be trying to get to 240, I think it is, before the end of January. We'll go with that. We've got some some news for you. I have got a volunteering placement with Nova Radio, which means that I do a bit of reporting there. So if you do want to check out their things, I do about a lot of stuff about the non-league, local in the northeast scene. So I do various stuff with that. And there'll also probably be some stuff I'm thinking of doing a decade since Leicester City won the unbelievable first division thing, and I'll do that at some point in the next couple of weeks. But thanks for watching me whittering on, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.